Hello, hello. Greetings from Nairobi. I don't know what time you're listening to this. I don't know what channel you're listening to this on, but my name is Mweteeli, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Joyce, who is my friend. We've had conversations with Joyce before, and I always get requests, please invite Joyce. And so here we are. Joyce, it's great to have you on my channel. I really enjoy having our conversations. So let me just allow you to introduce yourself. Possibly someone is new here and has not heard us speak before. So please introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Joyce Owaga. Of course, I go by other names, but I'm going to stay with Joyce Owaga. And I'm just glad to be here, glad to be talking to you, and hopefully we'll be able to find something that we can use to help you.
All right. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We are in totally different time zones. I'm in Nairobi, and Joyce, you are in North Carolina. I don't know what time it is for you there, but how long have you lived in the US?
I've now been in the US for going 17 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. Actually, those who may not have had us before, Joyce and I went to school together. And we actually finished our degree in commerce. And to my great surprise, Joyce changed into nursing when she left for the US. Maybe you would give us a little bit of what that journey was like. How did you completely uproot your career and start a career in the medical field?
Okay, so initially, I went to school for BCom and lived in Kenya, worked in marketing, and I enjoyed that. But somewhere along the line, my husband got sick. And of course, I was pushed into a caregiving role and had to take care of him. He was hospitalized for close to 1 year. And it was during that time of taking care of him that he constantly reminded me that, you may have missed your calling. And I was like, what does that mean? And he kept telling me, promise me if you ever get a chance, one day you'll go back to school. And I was like, no, I've already been to school. I'm done at my age. I'm not going back to school. I already have my career. I like what I'm doing. But while taking care of him in the hospital, this was Kenyatta Hospital, I realized, first of all, rude awakening, like, oh, okay, this is what nurses go through. This is what caregivers go through. I also realized that there were a lot of gaps. I also realized how ignorant I was about anything medical. And therefore, I was incapacitated in terms of what questions do I ask? How do I become an advocate for my patient when I don't even know what questions to ask? I knew that some mistakes were being made, your instinct, you just know that something is wrong. But because I didn't know any medical issues, I could not ask those questions. So to cut the long story short, my husband did not make it. He passed away. Of course, the last days of his illness, he kept hallucinating. And while hallucinating, he kept talking about Florence Nightingale. I had never heard about Florence Nightingale, never paid attention to it. And he kept telling me, I see you as a Florence Nightingale. And I'm like, who is that? Why are you obsessed with this woman? Or whatever, Anyway, I never paid too much attention to it until he passed away. So he passes away, and fast forward years later, I find myself in another relationship and get married to a guy who's a Nigerian, but he lived in the he was an American citizen. So that's how I relocate to the United States. Okay. At the back of my mind, I have this nagging feeling of hearing my husband reminding me, you missed your calling, and Florence Nightingale. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's time. And of course, when I get to the US, the first lady I meet, who was my neighbor, she saw me for the first time and she said, Joyce, I think you need to be a nurse. And I'm like, what is it about me that, she said, I don't know, but there's just something about it. I think you need to think about it. So she told me the schools that were available. I'm in the United States, everything is new and I'm trying to find myself, figure myself out. And I'm like, you know what, maybe I need to consider this nursing. And so that's how I went into nursing school. And so when I went into nursing school, it was so natural for me. I think after taking care, my husband was sick in the hospital, I used to have to take care of him, that he shared a ward with 9 other patients. And these 9 patients became my patients because they had 2 nurses, I don't know if the 2 nurses were just for them or the whole floor, but they ended up being my patients. So I'd go take care of my husband and then take care of these other 9 patients. So I had kind of just gotten used to them. And it's like that skill came back. It was a skill I was forced into learning. I had learned how to clean them, feed them. And I found that, and I was like, oh, if this is what nursing is, maybe this is my calling. I felt so at home doing it. And I remember when we graduated in nursing school, I got the best clinical student. And the teacher was like, this comes so naturally for you. Like, you don't have to force it. You don't have to fake it. It just happens for you. One other thing that nursing school did for me was that I remember one time taking care of a patient. And remember when my husband died, I had 2 children. I had a 5-year-old and I had a 6-month-old child. So I was never given time to mourn. I had to be strong for my children. So I had not had that closure. So fast forward, I'm in nursing school. I have this patient. The patient happens to be the same age my late husband was and happens to be an African-American. So I'm looking at this patient. I'm not seeing the patient. I'm seeing my late husband. And for the first time, I was like able to really mourn, cry about it, vent, like, you know, and that for me helped me get that closure. And so after that, I think for me, that's what pinned it. I was like, I think this is what I really need to do. You know, I felt like, okay, this is what you wanted me to do. You probably saw more than I saw. And I was like, okay, God, maybe this is what you have called me to do. And so that is how my nursing journey began. So having become a nurse, it's so interesting when you are in your purpose, everything opens up for you. I remember my first job, I got a job before I even finished nursing school. And so my first assignment was on a floor, here we call them step down ICU. So I was taking care of really critical patients. And I remember one time taking care of a patient who had a pulmonary embolism. And for some reason, I was like, so I learned about what pulmonary embolism was. And then one time, I'm taking my son, we were going to get their passports. And so my son is carrying the documents that we need. And part of the documents he was carrying was my late husband's death certificate. And he's reading it. And he says, Mom, what is a PE? And I'm like, a PE? Where did you read that from? And he's like, it's written here that cause of death for Dad was a PE. And I just started crying because I had wanted to find out what.
You finally figured it out.
Yes. And a part of why I even wanted to do nursing was like to find, I had these questions that I had no answers for. I was feeling guilty. Did I do the best for my husband? Was I the one who killed him? I had been told, oh, you're the one who killed him. You know, African culture, when your husband dies, you're the one who has killed him. So I had all these unanswered questions. I was like, did he die of something that might show up in my children one day? So I needed answers. So for me, that was like, I was like, whoa. He actually died of a PE. And now because I knew what a pulmonary embolism was, I was able to relate and I could see how he had.
Maybe for those of us who are not medics, including me, maybe you would explain what a PE is, because I'm not even sure I want to pronounce the full name, but what's a PE, just so that we can understand and follow.
Yes, so a pulmonary embolism is a blood clot.
Okay.
That it starts off, most of the times it will start off like in the leg and then it will move to the lungs. And when it gets to the lungs, then it blocks your flow of air and the oxygenation. And that's what kills a lot of people, you know. So my husband, having been hospitalized for long, he wasn't moving a lot. And so he had developed a blood clot, which must have dislodged and went to his lungs. And that's what killed him.
Oh, I see. Oh,
that was good news and bad news. Good news because I finally knew what had killed him. Bad news because I was like, could I have contributed? While he was sick, part of what I did was, because he wasn't, you know, mobile, I would massage him. Part of what can dislodge a pulmonary embolism is you messing with it. You're supposed to leave it alone. But I also had this anger. I was like, why in the hospital?
Why did no one tell you? Yes.
Yes. Why did he have like physical therapy to help him move? Why wasn't he given like aspirin? Aspirin is like, it helps to, you know, help patients to
clean the blood. Yes, I've had that.
Yes.
I've had that.
And I'm like, the solution for this PE was so easy. Why was it missed? And so again, I was still angry with my doctor. I remember having told, my late husband's doctor that I know something went wrong. And one day when I find it out, I'm coming back and we're going to have this conversation. And I was like, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, now I know I have the evidence and all that. The good thing with being in nursing now is that you kind of learn to be more empathetic. You realize that it's possible for mistakes to be made. They are not intentional. You realize it's possible for people to miss things, And then you realize the real thing for me was that you have to be informed. If you're going to be your patient's advocate, you must be informed. You must know what questions to ask. You must be the one who is asking the questions for your patient, looking at them, watching, telling the doctor, I see this difference, and insisting that you want that to be addressed. So basically, you as the patient advocate, you must have that information. You're not going to rely on the doctor or the nurses to do it for you. You have to have that information. And so I decided, instead of staying angry, because that anger wasn't going to help me, I was like, what can I do to turn this around? And so I said, my message is going to be to inform, to educate, to empower more people to know what questions they need to ask, but even more to empower more nurses, because the nurse is the person, you're the person who is with the patient most of the time. You're hands-on, you're the one who sees if the patient's condition has changed. And I was like, if I can empower more nurses, then if we can have more of us who are more informed, who want to be that advocate for the patient, then we would probably be able to get better outcomes for the patient. So that's why I have this passion to empower nurses, to give nurses a chance to enrich themselves, to be given to be given what their value is. One of the things I have enjoyed as a nurse in the United States is that it has given me so much opportunity. Like I said,
you actually told me about it, yes, and that was going to be my next question. You told me about the great opportunity that has become evident that you've noticed and that you wanted to, and I'm glad we're here. So please share, what is this opportunity? And if there's a nurse who is listening to us right now, what opportunities are these that are available? Just shed some light on that.
Okay, so there's a lot of opportunity for nurses. First of all, there's going to be a big shortage. I think it's going to be worldwide, but in the United States, in the UK, there's a big shortage for nurses. Reason being, most of the people who have been in the nursing program here in the United States have been the elderly people, the group that is being called the baby boomers. Most of these baby boomers now are aging because they are in their 70s, they are in their late 60s, 70s. So a lot of them are retiring. Now, COVID made this situation even worse. After COVID, a lot of these nurses did not even want to come back to work. So the shortage has even been made worse by these nurses not even coming. Remember, most of them had retired and they would come back and just pick extra shifts, as needed. But now with COVID, they don't even want to show up in the hospitals at all. So there is a big, big shortage. And so what most hospitals are doing now is they are recruiting internationally. They've realized that they have nurses in Kenya, in Africa, the Philippines, in India. And so they are recruiting more of the nurses, because apparently in these other countries, more younger people are going to school for nursing than here in the United States. Here in the United States, it's not like too many of them want to do nursing. So that is really wide open. And that's an opportunity that is wide open. I've talked to a lot of my nurses, friends who did nursing in Kenya. And these nurses are excellent nurses. I mean, the training that a nurse gets in Kenya is excellent. And I've often talked to them and said, why weren't you valued? And they're like, we don't know. You ask them how much they were paid. And I'm like, really?
Maybe this is an opportunity for me to make a confession, Joyce, because you and I went through school and came out with a BCom, which was somewhat a prestigious degree to have. And so we go into business and into marketing and all of that. And a few years later, you ship out and go to the US. And before I know it, you're calling me and telling me you're into nursing. And I'm thinking, Joyce has taken a step back. So maybe you shed some light on what kind of a lifestyle are you able to afford? Because we are trying to get to share this opportunity to those people who might want to relocate to the US. What kind of a lifestyle are you able to afford when you're a nurse in the US?
As a nurse in the US, first of all, the opportunities are immense because you can choose what specialty you want. I mean, If you're an ICU nurse, if you want to be a medical surgical nurse, if you want to be a dialysis nurse, a pediatric nurse, you can choose. I mean, the choices are there, and it's up to you. You can go and be a pediatric nurse, and after a while you're like, I don't think I love children too much. Let me move. I want to go to the ICU. Those opportunities are there. On top of that, most of your employers pay for you to go back and to school to further your education, to get a specialty. It's paid for you. And most of them take you to school. Like my current employer has paid for me to do my master's, now to work on my PhD. And all you give back to them is 2 years of service. The 2 years of service goes fast because for me, that's even job guarantee. I know for the next 2 years, they can't fire me. I have a job because
you would have worked there anyway. You would have been working there anyway. Okay.
Yes. And after they take you to school, they promote you. The financial or remuneration that you get, oh my goodness, you get paid well. Well, for a starting nurse in the United States, you would probably be paid about $29 an hour.
Okay. Okay.
You can translate that Kenya shillings.
You can translate that to whatever currency, depending on where someone is listening to us. Yes.
And then the shifts are, you work like a 12-hour shift. You can do an 8-hour shift. Most people prefer to do 12-hour shifts. So if you're doing a 12-hour shift, that means in a week you work 3 days. You've done your 40 hours a week.
Oh.
The rest of the days, you can choose another job.
In a week of 7 days, I could be working only 3 days.
3 days.
Okay, and do I get a lot of time off? Because again, some people will be afraid. I remember talking to somebody at one point who lived out in the diaspora, and she was saying she would kill her relatives. In order to get any vacation time, she would say, oh, my auntie has died. Oh, my grandmother has died. Do you get any time off, or do you have to find crafty ways of getting home? Should I come to America, do I completely disconnect from my family, or am I able to come and visit?
No, you're able to come and visit. The issue is you have to organize. You have to negotiate your terms.
Okay.
In a job market where you have, where you have choices, you can choose. So you can choose and decide, I want to work. If I have children, I can choose and say, I only want to work weekends because during the week, I'm with my children, I'm taking them to school, I want to go for the activities. So then you choose a shift of Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The rest of the week, you're working. You can choose a shift of, you want an afternoon shift where you come to work at 3, you start at 3 p.m., you end at 11 p.m. You can choose a shift where you start at 7 p.m., drop your children off in school, go to work, start from 7 p.m., finish at 3 p.m. 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. So you can work out your shifts. You can negotiate and decide, this is how I want my schedule to be, because you have choices.
So you're beautiful. That sounds very attractive. Actually, on a more personal note, of all my friends and family who live out in the West, you are the person I know who comes to Kenya the most often. Because I know that you've always throughout your career, you've always come home at least once or twice a year, every year. Mm-hmm. So I think that speaks to how much vacation time you have and also how much money you're making, because you're able to be in touch, you're able to send support back home to your parents and family. Yes. I think it's a great opportunity. I think we may not go into the details of that on this, but I think it would be a good idea to let people know about the upcoming webinar where we are going to give the details on the how to. Should somebody be interested in relocating to the US, I think it would be a good idea for us to have this webinar, and maybe you would shed some light on that, what we are going to be sharing on the webinar that's coming up.
Okay. So we are going to be having a webinar, and in this webinar, it's more of an informative webinar. We want to actually shed clarity on what is available, who it's available for, and what you can do, because we are realizing a lot of people don't even know that this opportunity is there. Some people are thinking it's too far reaching. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to put that together. And so we've put all this information down for you to gather. It is going to be very informative. We're going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions. We'll be able to answer your questions so that you can actually see who it is, for how it fits in, and how you can, a step-by-step kind of schedule of how you can work it out and make this a reality for you. So
beautiful, beautiful. I love what you're saying. And I'm sure that's where we are going to be able to share information, the nuts and bolts on how we do this, the step-by-step of how to get there legally, how to get to the US legally with proper documentation. Now, the webinar that Joyce is talking about is going to be on the 4th of June, 2022 at 8 p.m. East African time, 8 p.m. East African time. If you send us your information in the information box below, if you send us your contact details, we're going to send you a link to that webinar. It's absolutely free of charge. If you know a nurse who would like an opportunity to relocate, if you know somebody who is finishing nursing school, or anybody who is ambitious to become a nurse, you may not be a nurse already, but this, what we're talking about, sounds like it's resonating with you. You feel like this is something you would like to do, or know someone who would. If you're a parent whose child is just finishing nursing school, or is looking for an opportunity, or is a graduate nurse but doesn't have a job, this is definitely for you. I recommend that you attend. It's absolutely free of charge on the 4th of June, 2022 at 8 p.m. East African time. If you send us your details, we are going to be able to send you the link to attend this webinar. It's absolutely free of charge. Send this video to your friends, share this with the groups that you're in, and let's have as many people come in as possible. It's going to be live. You're going to get the opportunity, like she said, to ask questions, because she's been a nurse in the US the last over 15 years. She knows what it's like, what's the lifestyle changes. Write down any questions that you want to come and ask. What is required of you? What are the costs implication? What are you going to need to have passed? Because of course, there's the paperwork that needs to be done. All of those questions are going to be answered. We expect this will take about 90 minutes. I don't expect it to go beyond that, but we are really going to take the time to answer all of your questions. I think this is definitely for someone who's been looking for an opportunity and who wants to further their career. So Joyce, I really admire your generosity. A lot of people who find an opportunity don't want to share this with other people. I think you're different. I really admire you doing that. And I'm happy to help where I can so that we can have as many people as possible find this opportunity and become a blessing, even for those of us who are here and for family members who are their dependents. So I think this is maybe one question before we go. Is there, if I get this job, do I get the opportunity to relocate with my family? Did you go with your family, or did you leave your children behind?
You get the opportunity to go with your family. That's your spouse.
That's a good
because
question.
You have to be married. And we'll say more of that in the webinar. We will give you like what exactly you need. Like at the end of that webinar, you will have all the information you need to make a very, very informed decision. I mean, I'm going all out, giving you everything that you need to empower you. Because like I said, I want to be your advocate. I want to empower you. You're very well needed. Your services are needed. They are valued. And if nobody has told you thank you for all that you do. You do an excellent job. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really, really admire your passion, Joyce. I look forward to this webinar so that then we can shed light on we can share all the information that is needed. If you have any questions already, you can put them in the information box. But let's look forward to the live webinar on the 4th of June, where you're going to be able to ask all your questions. Share this with your friends. We're going to see you there. Maybe any closing words, Joyce, before we get off?
Just thank you, and just to tell you that dream that you think is too far away, it's never too far away, and it's never too late to start over. Thank you.
That's a nice place to close. I will say nothing else. Have a very good day. Have a very good evening. Bye-bye.